Want help to grow your business? Download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.
Welcome to Networking Made Simple. I'm Rebecca Herworth, and today I'll be sharing with you how to use networking to grow your team and to find partners. To start growing your team, well, I have 9 ways that I use networking in my business to help grow my team, and I'm going to share those with you today. First of all, it's really important to not only have a networking strategy, but to actually write that down. If it's you as the business owner who's doing all the networking and you know what you're doing but no one else knows, it becomes really difficult. So once you've written down what you're doing in networking, what your strategy is behind it, you can then share it with your team. So simple, yet one of the first steps that so many people don't do. And make sure you do share it with your team. Actually sit them down, have cake if you need to, and actually explain to them why you're doing what you're doing, the reason for the strategy, and what you're hoping to achieve with it. Make sure that all your team understand what networking is and what you're doing with it and the benefits it has to the business. You don't ever want to be in a situation when you go to a networking meeting, your team thinks you're just heading out for a few beers. They should understand that it's actually a thing that has value to your business. Next, we want to make sure that your team understand what an opportunity looks like. So the last thing you want is that they're sitting there with a friend at a barbecue on Saturday night and they say your perfect 3 words that in your head goes ding, 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 this is a perfect networking opportunity, or this is a perfect opportunity for my business. You've got to make sure that your team know that that's an opportunity too. So when you're sharing with them your networking strategy, make sure also that your team knows what an opportunity looks like. Then the next important part of that is to make sure that your team actually knows what to do with an opportunity. Make sure your team knows how to network. So when that opportunity happens, they can come into work on Monday morning and say, oh, I found an amazing contact. I think they can get us into this place. I know we've been trying to get into there. I'm going to call them this morning and have lunch with them tomorrow. You want to make sure that when your team has an opportunity put in front of them, that they know what to do with it. They know how to handle it. Really, my video, the first one is in this series on my 10 basics to getting started with networking, is a great way to start with your team, a great place to start with your team, to make sure that they know how to handle networking, to make sure that when that opportunity is in front of them, they know what to do with it. Next, you really need to make sure that you get your team involved. In fact, you shouldn't be the only one networking. It can get really dangerous if you're the one networking and representing your business and people get to know your business for you personally rather than for the business as a whole. There is an element where people buy from people, but if you do that where you're the only person that people know in a networking sense, then you can get into that difficult situation that when they come into the business, you're the only person they want to deal with. You're the only person they want running your job. Might be fine when you're small and might be fine when you've got the capacity to run those jobs. But as your business grows and gets bigger, it's really hard to ramp that up because you only have so many hours in the day. And it's really hard then to hand those clients on to other team members when they're used to dealing with you. So I actually think it's important that your whole team is networking, not just you as the business owner. Beware of building your own reputation too much and build your business's profile instead. So that often comes down to the language you use, but it can be very easy to get caught up in talking about me, I, what I do in my business, instead of talking about what the whole business's approach is. As a business, surely you should want to get to the point that no matter who a client deals with, they're getting the same experience, they're getting the same journey. You don't want to be recommended when someone says, use this business, but only use this person in that business. So make sure you're building your whole business's profile. If you're going to a networking event that's a regular weekly event, it could be that you actually take some of your staff with you, that you introduce your team to your networking group so that they start to realize it's not just you, there's a team with you and that they need to understand that there's more than one person around. But really I find it's your language that's key to making sure they understand it's a business, it's not just one person. And if they come to you, they can't expect that you as the one person are going to do everything. I like to use networking to train and develop your team. Now, this is a really key important one for me. When I get a new staff member in, a new person on my team, how do we get them to kind of practice to get up to speed? Well, I don't want them practicing on my brand new clients. In fact, I don't even want them practicing on my existing clients. I would much prefer that they practice these skills and got up to speed on networking people, because the implications if they do something wrong or say the wrong thing aren't going to be as severe as they are with an existing client or a new client. So I really love to use networking as a safe place for my new members of my team to practice. Or even if they're not new members of the team but they're stepping up to a higher role, well, again, I want them to practice in a networking situation rather than kind of rolling it out for the first time with a brand new client. I think it can be worse with existing clients because they're more likely to know what's right and what's wrong and be offended if they say the wrong thing. I like to use networking to develop my team's understanding of clients and different personalities. So this is a bit more of an advanced level, but it's really important that you start to learn how to deal with different people. So you might have a client that's really quietly spoken and quite shy. You might have a client who believes they're very knowledgeable, but they're actually not. And you might have a client who's actually very straightforward and almost aggressive, but actually doesn't want to deal with the detail. How you talk to those three different people is going to be very different. How you run a job for those three people is going to be very different. Now, I don't want my team to learn that on new clients or existing clients. So again, I'd much prefer that they learnt that in a networking situation, that they start to pay attention to the fact that there are different personalities, that they do need to frame what they say, how they present it in a different way depending on who they're talking to, where that person's coming from and where their interests are. This is also good when we're dealing with different personalities as far as slow talkers and fast talkers, or detail people and non-detail people, or action people and slow decision makers, so they can start to develop and see that not everyone has the same approach and the same personality that they do. A lot of people will come into things assuming, well, this is how I work, so this is how you will work, and that's just not the case. But again, I'd much prefer that my team learnt that in a safe networking situation than by practicing on my clients. And finally, I like to use networking to mature younger members of my team. So I often employ architectural graduates or even architectural students if they're good enough when they're still in their early 20s. And they're often going to be dealing with, say, a town planner in their 40s or a builder in their 50s. There are huge age gaps that in a professional situation we all have to deal with, and sometimes it's the other way. But for a younger person on your team, it's a really interesting experience for them to learn how to interact with those people of different ages, for them to learn how to have a conversation with someone that previously they would have only seen as a parent or a friend of their parents because they're of that age level. Again, I don't want them learning that on my clients. I'd much prefer that they learnt that in a networking situation, that they got used to and comfortable with a variety of people of different ages in an environment that doesn't have as great ramifications on my business. It's really interesting what comes out of that, and I actually find that by deliberately and proactively doing this, using networking with my younger team members, they actually get more advanced quicker, and they actually are able to take on more advanced workloads sooner because they've now got these skills. Oftentimes they don't even realising they're building those skills. So it's kind of a great win-win situation because they're building skills without realising the lack of not having that beforehand. So to summarise my 9 ways to grow your team with networking, we talked about making sure you had a written networking strategy and you shared that with your team. We talked about how to make sure that your team understands what an opportunity looks like and make sure your team knows what to do with that opportunity. They know how to network. We talked about getting your team involved in networking and building your business profile, not just your own personal profile. We talked about using networking to train and develop your team, using it to help them understand different personalities, different approaches that different people have, understanding your clients, and especially being able to work with different age levels within the corporate world. We're We're now going to move on from growing your team and actually talk about how to find partners for your business. Now, these two are vaguely interrelated because a lot of the similar base fundamentals work, but this is more about actually growing your business and how finding partners and using partnerships or joint ventures can actually be really beneficial and can come from networking. To start, there are 3 fundamentals. Now, these are homework things that you need to do before you can go about this. These are 3 fundamentals that you need to have in place for your business. Otherwise, I don't think there's any point starting conversations with people about potential partnerships. The first of those fundamentals is understanding your ideal client. Now, one thing I don't want to hear when I'm talking to someone about their business is when I ask them who is their ideal client and they say everyone. You really have to be specific. In fact, so specific that some people use the word avatar when they're talking about their ideal client. You have to be really specific, down to not just the gender and what their family's set up with, but their age and what cars do they drive and where do their kids go to school? What are their dreams and their hopes? What are their fears and their frustrations? You really need to get as specific as possible about who your ideal client is. And this works for many marketing things, but it works in partnerships as well. The second fundamental is then understand.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit Bryn.ai or search the App Store today.